Welcome everyone to Amaka Our World Festival. My name is Patricia Kihara and I'm your host this evening for the Wanderlust, the travel webinar. And it's such an honor to be here. I'm very, very excited. I've been looking forward to this day for such a long time, ever since Amaka got in touch with me. And I'm speaking to people today that I have been a fan of, that I've admired, that I have I've been standing for a while, so it's such a pleasure to be here with you guys today. I want to let you guys know that the summit's official hashtag today is Our World Festival. And please feel free to tag amaka.studio in any of the posts that you make throughout this panel and the whole summit, which is going on from today till Tuesday, because we are having a second giveaway. We're giving away an iPad and products from Black and African-owned brands. Also, I just want to let you know that this festival, the Our World Festival, is brought to you by Vista Bank, and it's such an honor to have them sponsor this entire festival. We are so grateful. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Patricia Kihara, and I like to describe myself as a multi-potentialite. I have been in the entertainment and content creation spheres in Kenya, Nairobi, pretty much all my life. I started performing as a singer when I was 10 years old, and professionally performing on stage from when I was 19. I have been a singer, I am an actor, radio presenter, TV presenter, improv comedian, content creator on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the above. I am most recently a skincare entrepreneur for my brand Uncover Skincare. And I just love to travel. I am 35 years old and I am proudly an African woman, proudly Kenyan, and I am happy to be in the company of some amazing, amazing women today. So without further ado, I will also introduce the four women who I'll be speaking to this evening. They are such strong brands when it comes to traveling around the world. I'll start with Lee Litumbe, who is the face and voice behind the popular travel and lifestyle website Spirited Pursuit, through which she features travel stories, curated city guides, and she showcases authentic experiences on her travels. We also have Neka J. Neka Julia is a writer, a photographer, the host of two podcasts, Passing Through, which I absolutely loved, and the Layover podcast as well, which I've binged. And there she chronicles her mental and spiritual journeys from traveling. If you haven't listened to it, it's dating stories, relationships, lessons in love and travel, which everyone should listen to. We have Sylvia Njoki, who's an award-winning Kenyan fashion journalist. She's a content creator and editor of her own eponymous blog, sylvianjoki.com. In 2016, Sylvia won Best Blogger at the A. Bryant's Fashion and Style Awards in Uganda. A year before that, she won Best Fashion Writer and Best Blog in the Kenyan Bake Awards. And the following year, Abrams awarded her the title of Fashion Writer of the Year in Africa. If you follow her on Instagram, you know that her aesthetic is mind-blowing. She's a self-taught photographer. Her presets are great, and her travels with her daughter are just so beautiful. She makes me want to, have children immediately. And finally, we have Annette Richmond. Now, Annette paved the way for plus-sized women by developing her Fat Girls Traveling Instagram account into a Facebook community and a travel blog. She wanted to break the industry's non-representational conformity of plus-sized people with her empowering brand. Now, we have so much I want to cover, and I hope we'll be able to speak and cover everything in the next hour and some. Some of the questions that we have curated, I think, will delve deep into your lives, your travels, and a little bit of your personal lives. But I want to start, first of all, with asking, where in the world are you right now, and where are you from? We'll start with you, Neka.
I am currently in Detroit, Michigan, but I grew up in Ann Arbor. So it's where my family has been for a long time. My dad moved around a lot. We're in Atlanta for a little bit, and then Pennsylvania, Maryland area, and settled on Michigan. So I'm here right now. No water surrounding me like that where I'm at. No beach, but it's a great place to take off from.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next up, we have Lee. If you can let us know where you are right now and where you're from.
Sure. So I am currently in Atlanta, and this is where I grew up and spent most of my life, but I'm actually typically based in Dakar, Senegal. And I'm here for work, so it's kind of a short trip and get to spend time with family. And I am from Cameroon. So I was actually born in Douala and spent my childhood there before moving to Atlanta. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Sylvia, where are you from and where are you right now?
So I'm from Kenya. I was born in a small town called Nakuru in Kenya, and I grew up in Thika. But in my adult years, now that I live in a small town called Kilifi, it's a resort town in the work. So I tend to think that I have two homes, both in Kilifi and Nairobi. But currently, I am in the Kenyan coastal town of Kilifi.
Thank you. And Annette?
I am currently in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, but I am from the Bay Area, California. I'm a California girl.
Fantastic. I forgot to say where I am. I am in Nairobi right now. I was born and raised in Nairobi. I haven't lived anywhere else. I love Nairobi too much, but I have been thinking about moving away from the city and maybe going somewhere with an ocean or somewhere in the mountains. So, first question that I'd like to ask each of you is, what advice would you give to family or friends who may question your dream of traveling the globe? We'll go in the same order as we did before. So Neka, you can go first.
Okay. I can. I've been thankful and fortunate enough to not have a lot of family who were opposed to traveling. So my father's from Nigeria. He's an Igbo man. My mother's from Cambodia, and we took a lot of trips growing up back home. So they weren't opposed to me traveling to other parts of the globe because they themselves were kind of nomadic at certain times in their life. But I've learned if a lot of people oppose you, be it family members who question whether you're going or friends that question whether you're going, I think where you're going and why, I think it's important to keep your counsel very small. I think it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people who understand a lot of these things, and instead of just sharing it with everyone, because you learn the older you get and the more places that you go that not everyone is necessarily happy for the amount of places you're going and the experiences that you might be having because of how they feel about themselves or their own experiences. So I do think that keeping your counsel small and who you share some of these things with is relatively, if not very important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So growing up, my parents they have a travel management company. And so I was exposed to travel quite young as well. And I remember spending my childhood coming from Douala and like spending my summers in the US. So I was always traveling. But even with my parents knowing that I love to travel, they were probably very shocked when I decided, I was like, okay, I don't want to live in the US anymore. And I wanted to just like move back to Africa and like with no real plan and just kind of go. They were very confused. And but they were very supportive. I do agree with Neka that a lot of times when we are trying to make a decision that we're not sure of, we seek counsel from people who don't have lived experiences to what we're aspiring to. And so it's really important to kind of set intentions and define what your why is. A lot of times people want to travel for the sake of like discovering themselves, having new experiences. We all have a different reason why we want to do something. So I think it's really important to get really clear on what your why is. That way it's a lot easier to kind of let anyone else's definitions of what you should be doing or why you should not be doing it, like you don't internalize that. And I think that people are scared. People really tend not to want to take risks. And I think that there's an inherent risk that comes with travel. And so again, there's different kinds of travelers. There's different kinds of reasons why you want to travel. Just kind of allow yourself the space to grow and define what you want versus what other people may want for you.
Right. Sylvia.
So I was a very late bloomer when it came to traveling. I mean, when I was growing up, we never really traveled. Probably went to the village to see my grandparents maybe once or twice a year. So I never really traveled growing up. But one thing I'm grateful for is my father got me all these pen pals from all over the world, and it was always so much fun. I'd get the letters and I'd like sniff them. I'm like, oh, is this how America smells like? It's just crazy. So I was always like wanting to travel, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. And maybe I never had the opportunity to do it, or we couldn't afford it when I was younger. But I've always known that this is something I wanted to do eventually. So I was very late bloomer when it came to traveling. And I think for me, my family, when they question my traveling, it's out of fear. I mean, I guess they're excited for me to travel, but I think it's just the fear of the unknown and the concerns of what could go wrong when I'm traveling solo. So I do understand that, and I try to make them know that I'm trying to take the precautions that need to be taken, and I do my research, and I'm staying with friends and family abroad, and I let them know of my whereabouts and keep them updated. So I try to reassure them, and over the years, I found that that has worked, because for them, they were excited to know that I'm traveling, but it's just the fear of not knowing what could happen, me being out there in the world by myself. So I think now it's okay. They don't really question that. But of course, there was that initial fear when I started traveling. And I think now I'm inspiring more people. I've inspired more people over the years in my family and also outside of my family.
Right. Annette.
Yeah, I would say that my experience is similar to Sylvia, where my family didn't travel much as I was growing up. We really couldn't afford it. And the first kind of big trip that I did take was solo. I generally do travel solo. And so my family, they get anxious and nervous and fearful about me traveling the world solo. But with all of the experiences that I've had, positive and negative traveling, like the negative things that I have experienced, I've experienced them in America as well. And so I feel like oftentimes people fear things that will happen in different country and maybe you being further away from home or from friends and family. But I often will have worse experiences in the country that I was born in. So I write about all of those experiences to kind of share that, like, no matter where you go, there are going to be people who don't want to see you thrive. And so basically you have to put your safety first and make sure that you make your safety a priority. And one of the ways that I do that now is, like, anytime I'm about to hop on a plane, I'll just call my mom and let her know. And that kind of relieves some of the fear for her. But otherwise, I try not to let other people's fear, like, keep me grounded if I want to fly, you know?
Right. Well, just to expound on that question, I know for a lot of us, me included, back in the day growing up, travel was a thing that we did on the holidays after work or after school. It was a thing that we did as, you know, a reward for the year. It's a vacation. But for each of you, travel has it's become the main facet of what it is that you do. I think speaking for all of you, you all started out, even when you went to uni or to college, you studied something different or you had different plans for your life, but then you've evolved into this person who is mainly doing travel content or creating around travel. How was it for yourself to kind of just shift from, for instance, Lee, you're a financial analyst, and then now the main thing that you're doing is travel, even though I know you said that you do financial analysis, you know, you still do it. Annette, you know, you were a fashion stylist. That's what you studied. You know, it was something that you were going to make a career out of. Sylvia, I know you spoke at some point, you wanted to be a nun, but then that evolved into also going into fashion, studying fashion. And Neka, I know the first time you told your mom that you wanted to travel, you were a bit surprised that she was actually like, yeah, take the trip, go. And then, you know, it became this thing that you're telling stories around your travel and you're sharing lessons. What was it like having to move, or for yourself even just to shift into, okay, this is the thing that I'm now doing and it's the main thing, even with people who around you may have been wondering, wait, but I thought this was the thing that you were doing something else. How do you explain to people and to yourself that this is now the thing that I'm doing, and you're comfortable sitting in that?
I first want to preface that it always sounds a lot easier when you're looking back. I think when I first decided that I wanted to pursue what I'm doing now full time, it was terrifying and it didn't look the way it does now. I think right now, if you go online, you can see people with carved out careers. That wasn't really what I started off with. I'm from like a Tumblr era, where like people had content, but it wasn't really monetized. So it wasn't something that I went in really thinking like, oh, I have this sure way of how I'm going to monetize this. I literally, I was suffocating in my old life. It was not a choice. I had to change. I was literally having a quarter life crisis and I hated my life. I hated everything that I had built around. I had gone to school for subject matter that I didn't care about, even though I was good at it. I was living a life in Atlanta that did not fulfill me. I was just unhappy. And I just decided that it would be more painful to stay in a life that I didn't want than pursuing the unknown. And that is terrifying. So I just want to clarify, it's not glamorous, or it wasn't for me. And it's not something, the only thing that I was sure of was my passion. And that sounds so cheesy to say, but that's literally the only thing that I was sure of. And when I decided to go, a lot of times, especially, being African, my mom was like, so many people are trying to go to the US. You're American, you have US passport. Why are you coming back? Like, they were very confused. They were very confused about why. And for me, like, I just had this sense of urgency. I had this sense of urgency because I knew that I wanted to be a part of presenting the way that I see the world to the world, and not only for the world, but for Africans themselves. And so for me, I just had this sense of urgency for that. And I just wanted to have a creative life. I was so tired of sitting and doing pivot tables in Excel and all this stuff. And I was just like, I want to be myself, and I want to give myself the space to be myself. And I think that I've always identified, because my identity was so closely tied to travel, it felt easy to pursue myself in that way. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. It does. And that for you, it felt like it was much more important for you to pursue the thing that you felt that you loved, rather than stick in a thing that you felt muffled and stifled in.
And I think a lot of times we are living our lives outwardly in, where we allow external factors to influence how we live, who we are. And I'm on this constant pursuit of living a purpose-driven life. I'm constantly trying to unlearn the things that I pick up that are not me, because we do get so influenced by other people. And for me, the version of myself when I'm traveling is my most honest and authentic self. And that is what attracts me to travel. I'm the most curious when I'm traveling. I'm the most creative when I'm traveling. And I like that version of me. Me in my day-to-day life is a little bit boring and from my perspective. And it's a little bit like I'm not as inspired by day to day, and which brings the challenge of the past year with COVID. You confront yourself when you are not able to do the thing you identify with the most. You're forced to kind of look within yourself and say, okay, who am I when I'm not doing this? And so, I don't want to take over. I'd like to give the ladies an opportunity to speak, but yeah.
Thank you. Nneka, Annette, anybody with me?
I like for me, it's funny because I was working. My family has had a business. And I don't give this backstory a lot because I always see people's eyes like gloss over because they're like, I don't know what you do or care about what you do. Tell me about the travel. But my dad started a human services organization when I was about 15. So we staff for the mental health community and also the developmentally disabled in Washtenaw County, which is in Michigan. So I've been working in mental health for literally like 15 years of my life. So I didn't completely quit travel. I learned so much about business. And I think when we get to that portion of when we're talking about branded content and dealing with companies and all that stuff, it came in so much handy because it's art and science, like the business of creating this content, and also like, you know, now you're mixing in brands and corporations and all that stuff, and it's easy to get swindled. But
Yeah.
I'd been working with my company, with my family's company, for this amount of time, and as we built it out, as we grew, I got more time and more funds to now put towards traveling. So I would do that when I had spare time, and photography was really the catalyst for me traveling. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, okay, like, you know, I just want to go to this place. It was I'm taking the Steve McCurrys and all of these photographers that I admire, I'm taking their work and I want to reproduce this thing. This is how I want to practice. And for me, after a while, like travel was such, like, to echo Lee, it was you found yourself in these places, right? No matter if it was a new place, you just found a new piece of yourself in that place. And for me, that was invigorating. It was inspiring. And when I did get time to sit down, I think in 2018, I realized, like, I'm forgetting a lot of these experiences. I have these photos, but I'm forgetting what happened. I'm forgetting the people I talked to. I'm forgetting the places I've been and how they affected who I am. So I think that, I mean, depending on what your medium is, whether it's photography, whether it is writing, I think everyone should put, I think your voice in the air is a second page. I think you should be documenting in some way through your voice as well. Starting the podcast Passing Through for me was what really, I think, solidified my love of the places I've been and the people I've met, because I was able to tell people what I had been through while I was in this beautiful place. Like, yeah, I'm on a camel in Morocco, but like, I'm having the worst breakup of my life, you know? Like it's like you can't see that through just a photo.
Right.
So I think that my parents, they've listened to the podcast, and I'm glad that they're able to understand that it's not just I'm taking what my dad did, because he has captured a lot of photos himself. I'm taking what he did and kind of expanding on that. So my parents are happy. They're a hard audience to please. They you know, a lot of African parents, they stab you in your front and brag about you behind your back. So
That's true.
you know, they tend
hard to
that. They really do. They really do. But you know, I think that it's all in the journey. I really do, and people will come to accept it when they see how happy you are doing it.
Right.
I think my stories, I think my story is a little different because I started working as a fashion stylist for a remote company. And so initially I could kind of travel anywhere and still have the security of having like a paycheck. And so when the company launched, that was something that really encouraged me to start traveling more, because I knew that like every 2 weeks I was going to get paid. And in the beginning, I could be anywhere in the world because it was a startup company. And then probably by year like 3 or 4 of me working as a fashion stylist for that company, the rules kind of changed. They went public. And so basically, in order to work for them, you had to be in the States. And so I had to make a really hard decision of leaving that job. But like so much of my identity was wrapped up in my career. Like I loved my job as a fashion stylist, and I love like making a difference in so many women's lives, especially being able to focus on like plus size women and being able to style them. But it was something that I wanted to do because I had fallen in love with travel, and I couldn't just give that up and move back to California to keep that job. And so I kind of had to figure out a way to make it work as a freelancer. But I do think that's kind of a unique situation because, like Lee mentioned, now more companies are offering remote opportunities. And so maybe this is an opportunity for people who are interested in traveling more to kind of figure out that route, because that's the route that I took as far as like getting a remote job first and then kind of figuring out my footing as a travel writer.
Right. Thank you. Sylvia.
So I'll say for me, the core of what I've always loved is fashion. You said I wanted to be a nun. I remember telling my mom, I really wanted to be a nun when I was in high school. I remember telling my mom, when I become a nun, I'm going to be designing rosaries and their robes. And she said, oh, you're doing this for the wrong thing. So anyway, I've always, the core of what I've always wanted to do was fashion. So even when I travel, it's always about connecting with, people who love fashion, meeting local designers. So that has always been my core. And everything else that has happened, I was a fashion stylist, and then I started traveling, just morphed over the years. It's always about me following my heart and seeing what it wants, and at that time in my life, what I really wanted to do. So I started off as a fashion blogger, and then I went into fashion styling, and now I'm traveling. And now I'm getting into traveling with my daughter. She's 8 years old, and she's easier to travel with now than she was when she was maybe 2 or 3. So maybe I'll start doing mommy-daughter traveling and family. I don't know. I've just always followed my heart and what feels right, because at the end of the day, I don't want to look back and think, what if I did this? What if I didn't travel? What if I didn't? And we have a passport that doesn't allow you to travel as often as other people in other countries. Patricia, you experience that. So any opportunity I get to travel, I take it, because even some people from my village, I remember I went back to when I visited the US the first time. I came back to Africa, and I had some goodies for friends in the village, and they said, "Oh, you were in the USA and you came back?" I wouldn't come back if I was in the USA. Just trying to educate people and let them know that we also have things about us that we are so privileged to have. We are lucky to live in the country that we live in. Other people don't see it, and just to have this opportunity to educate them is always such a blessing. And I always love traveling and bringing back stories, and to people back in my village, as I told you, who don't have Facebook or Instagram, who don't get to see these things. They just think that once you get on a flight, you're not coming back to Kenya. So I've always loved traveling and coming back with stories, and I think that's what has kept me going and kept me on this track.
If I may add to what Sylvia just said, because I think that's very beautiful. I think one of the beautiful things about travel is that it can allow you to appreciate home more, and and a lot of times, particularly from an African perspective, because I also understand that desire that elsewhere is better than anywhere within the continent. But a lot of times, like my parents live in Cameroon. They don't live in the US. They never wanted to live in the US because they enjoy the lifestyle that they have within Africa. They like to come to the US and shop and buy the things that they want and take it back. And so I think that a lot of times there's an appreciation that can come when you go somewhere else, and yes, you can enjoy it, but then come back home and value what you have at home.
Right. So all of you have built platforms around your travels, and while building those platforms, I'm sure initially that wasn't the case. I don't think you started traveling saying, I'm going to travel to this place and I'm going to document this because my reason to travel is because America needs more Africans to tell a story, which is something that you've said, Lee. I would imagine that this is something that evolved and you found yourself doing because of what you are getting back from sharing these stories, right? And with you, Nneka, I know that one of the reasons you then started to share your photography on your travel spot with a podcast is you said that you didn't want people to feel like they were alone in going through the things they were going through, because like you earlier said, you might post a beautiful picture, but nobody knows what you're going through in that moment, right? And it's interesting for me because when I first encountered your content, it was around Waste His Time Wednesdays, right? And I just knew that Nneka is this badass woman who has no time for trifling men, waste his time as she's drinking wine and looking fabulous. And when I listen to your podcast and I'm thinking, wait, she's crying over a guy? Really, Nneka? I couldn't imagine that. And Annette, for you, I know that one, you spoke about traveling for fat women and fat girls. First of all, using the word fat, which a lot of people are uncomfortable with, but for you, you wanted to empower the word, and you say it and you say it proudly because you are a fat girl, right? And then speaking into the body positivity movement around travel, you spoke about issues that people don't think about when women who are plus sized are traveling. For instance, you never think about, I'm going to go to Costa Rica and I want to go parasailing, but they may not be able to accommodate my body and my size because, I'm not a straight sized woman. So when you started to then document and create this community where women could speak about their experiences as fat women, and speaking about places that are accessible to fat women, that became what your platform was about and became so meaningful to so many women. And Sylvia, for you, I think as much as you speak around the fashion and connecting with fashion and people around fashion, for me, which is another thing that you spoke about, is even when I traveled, the first time I traveled, I was 17 and I went to the US, people did not expect me to come back, including my parents, right? But the thing about going out there and then telling stories about the places you visit, but now also proudly visiting these places as an African woman and showing them that, yeah, we also are fabulous in our Kenyan African brands, fashion, not necessarily that I'm scrambling to look for these Western brands, but that I can look fabulous in our homegrown brands. You've built these platforms that are telling these wonderful stories. But what would you say to somebody who's just thinking that they want to travel for the sake of travel? It might not be a significant reason around telling a story or sharing, you know, it might not be about building a platform, but somebody who just wants to travel and they've never felt like it was something for them to do because, you know, it wasn't something that they saw growing up or that has been representative of who they are. What advice would you give to a woman or to somebody who wants to travel and to travel by themselves solo in the climate that we're in right now?
I'd say go for it. I mean, I don't think they don't have to have the same reasons that I have or we all have. I think just traveling just opens up your mind. You stop having that sort of myopic view of things. There's always going to be a difference between somebody who's traveled and somebody who doesn't travel. Even if they've grown up in the same area, just having conversations with them, you just feel the energy of somebody who's traveled, and not just traveling, but just traveling and having that open mind, being welcoming, understanding that people are different and accepting that and appreciating that and not being judgmental, learning, going out there and talking to people. You don't have to have the same, you don't have to document. Not everyone has to document. If you want to travel and put your phone away and just talk to people, go to cafes, meet people, go to a festival and just interact with people, that's fine. But I feel like traveling is so important. And now over the last, you cannot compare our traveling time now to when our parents were our age, where tickets were ridiculously expensive. Now people are traveling, the airlines, as there's so many airlines, the ticket prices are so competitive. You can go, you have Airbnb, you have couch surfing. I mean, it's about making sacrifices and going out there to travel. And there's so many resources online that can inform where you want to go. And of course, as a solo female traveler, there are all the precautions you have to take and educate yourself and make an informed decision in terms of the places that you want to visit, make sure it's safe. And if you want to travel as a solo female traveler and it's your first time, I don't know, I just feel like maybe you want to start local. I always say that maybe start local, maybe do something. Okay, maybe go to, if you're in Kenya, just maybe go to Zanzibar or do Dar es Salaam. Like maybe if you're traveling solo for the first time, do something that's not too out of your reach, because I just feel like it's just nice to start small and then, you know, just take all the precautions that you need to take and just go out there, you know, because there's so many people who would love to have that opportunity, but they can't. But I also feel like if you really want to do it, if you're determined to do it, there are limitless opportunities out there for you to travel.
Thank you. Thank you. Start small, but just do it.
I think it's also important to build your travel around something that you're already interested in, especially if you don't want to worry about documenting, creating. If you are somebody who likes to eat food, take a cooking class, you know, build it around that. If you are somebody who's adventurous, do something adventurous. That way, when you're on this solo trip, you're still around the energy of people who have like-minded interests as you, and you feel less intimidated by the fact that you're alone, but you're still benefiting from doing something that you love and being able to travel. So I would definitely say that build your interests, build your travel around your interests for sure.
My first solo trip was, like Sylvia said, it was local. I mean, it wasn't local to the state, but it was local in the United States. So I took a trip to Utah by myself for like 5 days. I drove from Vegas to Utah, stayed on Zion National Park, and then drove from there to Arizona. I met so many people along the way. So I think that if you're going to do it you're never alone. You're traveling alone, but you're never alone when you're in these places. So I mean, there is, I think documenting and creating and content, that's not necessarily that's never been what travel is about for our parents, for our great grandparents. As a human being, we are travelers. So I think going to a place, not creating content, maybe snap, whatever, doing whatever, like Lee said, whatever you're interested in at the time, that is going to broaden your view of the world. Like I was recently, I just came back from Oaxaca, and after not traveling for over a year, and the airport alone is a microcosm of the world. It is. Every stop along the way, you meet people, you see faces, you see that there's human elements that thread through all of us. The desire to love, to eat, to relax. All these things you see in different parts of the world, and you realize that we really aren't that much different from each other. It's just, I mean, I think that travel will change you if you let it.
Yeah.
And how you let it change you is you just, wherever you are, be there fully.
Annette.
Yeah, I would say that my first trip was international, solo, and I like went all the way out there. But I oftentimes think that people only associate travel with like international travel. And there are a ton of great trips and lessons that you can learn even from just stepping outside of your home. Like as a fat person, every day I'm having to overcome different obstacles, not even leaving far from where I live. But it's like you could take a bus ride to travel. You could take a train ride. It doesn't have to be a different state, doesn't have to be a different country. It's like just get outside of your comfort zone and experience life from a different perspective. For me, that's what travel really is. And as far as like documenting it, I say don't feel pressure to do that. I feel like one of the things that we're lacking as Black women is just simply joy. So like go somewhere and enjoy yourself, like really immerse yourself in the experience, celebrate the opportunity that you get to experience that, whether that be, like I said, a walk to the park, going to a friend's pool, like really just immerse yourself in the joy. But also, number one, like be safe. Like right now we're still going through this global pandemic. So if you need to wear a mask, if you need to get, a COVID test before you leave, wherever you need to go, like make sure that that's a priority. Then second priority, just enjoy yourself, because there's such a lack of Black joy right now. And that's the number one thing I would encourage, regardless of where you go.
Yeah, I know, Lee, you've spoken about the guilt of wanting to capture moments instead of fully living them. And I think one of the things that I learned even on my travels is you can have days where you're going to focus on content or capturing moments, and then other days where it's just living in the moment. And I think also speaking to curating your travels around your interests, one of my interests that I share with people that they don't get is I love supermarkets. So going to a supermarket in a different country and just seeing the layout, like I love going to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, like those are the things that excite me. And I'll document it because, I'm happy to, make puns around products in supermarkets as I'm traveling. But that's just one facet of it. So with that in mind, I know you spoke about passport privilege or alluded to it. Sylvia and I, we have a Kenyan passport. And what that means is that we have to be, when we're thinking about places to travel, you're just thinking about how easy is it to get a visa to get there? How much does it cost? I know, Sylvia, we've had conversations in the DMs around, I think you were going to Spain and I'd recently been, but sharing tips around, okay, the French embassy is really friendly, so maybe try visit France first because they'll give you a Schengen visa that allows you to visit 25 European countries. But for the three of you, Neka, Lee, and Annette, you have American passports, right? So how would you say, or how would you advise someone who might not necessarily have a passport that affords them the privilege to visit as many countries as, say, a strong passport like an American one does? And I want to hear your perspective, and then I'll also hear from Sylvia, because that's also a different perspective.
I would say if because I have a Nigerian passport as well, so I mean I've talked to family members about how difficult it is to travel on that passport, even on the continent, which is ridiculous. So if you don't have the strength of what the U.S. passport is, it is important, I think, to echo what Sylvia says, to start locally, to go to places that you feel like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't some international across the pond continental trip, but there's so many. If this time period hasn't taught us anything, there's so much treasure within your back, so many riches within your own culture that you have yet to uncover, and this is an opportunity to do that. And we so often look beyond ourselves, and it takes a stranger to come in with fresh eyes to see beauty that we don't recognize about our own. So I think that it's important to start locally, to think globally, but explore locally, I would say. If you have the strength of that, of the passport, and you're thinking, what do I want to do, and I can't get into here as easily, go and uncover the treasures in the places that you can go to. For now.
I definitely mirror those sentiments. So for me, I have an American passport now, but I didn't always. So my situation is that I have traveled at the beginning of my travels, I traveled on a Cameroonian passport, which you would be surprised to know that Kenyans have it a lot better than Cameroonians. I'll just leave it at there. And I think that so for me, it's very close to me, and I'm very sensitive to that. And that was part of the reason why I had brought it up before, is because I recognize that there is a lot in the way that right now I live a very intercontinental life. I'm within the US sometimes, I'm within Africa sometimes. And I recognize that is purely because of the passport that I have. That's the reason why it's easier for me to do that. And I'd also kind of, after living within Senegal for the past few years and living the way that I do, I'd written an article that really was a reflection on all of the privileges that come with having a certain kind of passport, and all the challenges that come with having, because it should not be hard for an African to travel within Africa. Why is it that if I go to South Africa as an American, why is it easier than someone who is coming from a neighboring country? And why is it that if I am in Senegal, if I had a Cameroonian passport, to go to Cote d'Ivoire, to go to other countries, there's so many barriers for Africans within the continent of Africa. And I think that I don't necessarily have the answer to that, but I think it's very important for us to talk about that. And I think it's very important for us to have an awareness, because not only is it easier for foreign nations to travel within Africa, but their money goes further. And so it's also not fair. Even if you are traveling locally, you should not have to spend and pay the same rates as somebody who's visiting and paying in a foreign currency. There should always be a local price to certain things versus an international price. And again, I don't know that I have an answer, but I think it's important to have an awareness of that. And I think that the best advice that I can give you is, if you want to travel, whether it's locally, whether it's internationally, and you're carrying a passport that limits where you can go, I think you have to really plan and prepare. I remember right when I graduated from college, I was still traveling on a Cameroonian passport, and I decided I wanted to backpack through South Africa. And so I literally did research, and I was living in the US at the time. I had a green card at the time. And so I So you have to provide so much information. You have to show banking information. You have to give exact locations of the hotels you're going to stay. But it was just more about my determination to go, even though there were so many barriers. So it's not impossible to do. You just have to be very intentional about it. And and of course, you can't just decide, okay, I'm in South Africa, I want to go to Namibia next. Like, there's a whole process to having to be able to go to a neighboring country, even if you're close by. So I understand both sides to it. And I just encourage preparation. And also, as someone who now has an American passport, I, again, can only speak about the awareness of the challenge, even though I don't have a solution for it.
Right.
As someone with an American passport, I definitely recognize the accessibility that I have for travel. And I also acknowledge that I don't really understand my passport privilege when it comes to other countries and other nations. As far as any type of advice that I could give, my only experience would be something similar to like visas, because depending on the countries that you're visiting, you can only stay in certain places for a certain amount of time based on the tourism visa. And so one thing that I have done in the past was a program called Workaway, which basically puts you into direct contact with someone in the country that you're considering. Basically, it's like a volunteer exchange program. And so in exchange for volunteering for this business, this company, this family, you would be able to visit that country. And so for me, one of the ways that I can circumvent that is making a direct connection with someone through Workaway and them kind of petitioning the country to have me come as a volunteer. And so I'm not sure if that's something, like, obviously it's going to take a ton of research depending on where your passport or where you're from and your passport and all that kind of stuff. But that's something that I have done in the past to kind of help me create opportunities for myself when they weren't there.
Thank you. Sylvia.
So, I mean, Patricia, you understand, the sort of passport hierarchy and us having what they call like a weak passport, although Lee has said that Cameroon, we're probably more privileged than Cameroon. But, it's a struggle we've had for a long time. And I mean, I don't have the answers or solutions, a lot of bureaucracy that comes with it. And I know that I'll start with the good, because for me, I know that when I bag a passport for like a big country, quote, I'm always like honored, like, oh yeah, finally I have a 5-year US visa. But also I understand that it's not that easy. When I applied for my first US visa when I was in campus, I had no job. I had saved a few shillings, shillings is the Kenyan currency, every few months, until I was able to, okay, fine, I can save for a passport, I can afford to be in the US for a month. And they still denied my visa because I didn't have a job. And I had all the intentions of coming back because I was in campus. So there's a lot of where else someone else in the US would just jump on a flight and come to Kenya. Another thing, there's one of them that kind of like, I don't understand also why Africans close borders to each other. Like for me to go to South Africa, I need to give like a bank statement. I need to show them my work documentation, some very intrusive documents that I have to give. Yet when South Africans come to Kenya, they just pay a few dollars at the airport and they can come in. So I still don't understand these things. And as Lee said, it's a conversation that we need to have and bring awareness to it. Meanwhile, I'm just like people, Kenyans and people who consider having like weak passports. So there's so many other places that you can visit. It's unfortunate that it will probably cost me more to go to, like, I was looking at flights to Namibia the other day and to Benin, because I want to see more of Africa, and it actually costs cheaper to go to Europe than it is to travel within Africa. So it's just conversations that we need to have. And maybe things are going to change. I always try to, whenever I feel disheartened, I always try to look back and think things are actually getting better. People are getting visas more now than they were, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. So things are getting better. We just have to continue having this conversation, because at the end of the day, it's our governments that make all these decisions. So we just have to continue having these conversations. And in the meantime, just go where you can afford and where your passport can take you. Just don't be disheartened. Don't I cannot go to Australia or the US or Canada, so I'm never going to travel. Just go to Tanzania, go to Zanzibar. There are lots of beautiful places around you if you do your research.
Right. So around the topic of privilege still, I think the one thing that we all have in common is that we are Black women. Regardless of where we travel, we are Black women. So regardless even of our passport, we are Black women. And I think the difference usually that happens is the difference, for instance, between Lee and myself is that people will recognize your accent is American, and maybe that will change how then people will treat you. But I would like to ask, what are some of the challenges that you have faced as a Black woman traveling around the world when you're solo, and what tips would you give around sort of facing or working around those challenges that you've faced in the past? And this is for all of you, so whoever wants to go first.
This is it's a big question. It sounds simple, but for me, it's a big question because, again, I really like to center a lot of my experiences within an African context, because a lot of the time when I first started traveling full-time in the way that I am and creating the way that I do, my intention was to show other African women, other Black women, that it's possible to travel within Africa by yourself and feel safe and feel empowered. And there's a lot of beauty that has come from that. There's a lot of amazing experiences that I've had. It's not always glamorous to talk about the times when I've been mistaken as a prostitute. It's not always glamorous to talk about the times when I am racially profiled within an African country. It's not always glamorous to not know if someone is treating you a certain way, if it's because you're a woman or if it's because you're Black. So there's so many things that I admire, say, about Nneka's content with podcasting, kind of delving deeper into the context of your travel experiences that photos simply cannot capture. And so I would say that my partner, my now fiance, is also a European white man. And now I don't travel solo as much. So I travel with him. And my personality is one where I typically would not even share, I don't like my content to be about my relationship. So I typically would not even post. I rarely post my relationship. But aside from that, I'm also very intentional and cautious about how I present my relationship online, because I think that if it is very easy, it would be very easy for someone to perceive him as the gatekeeper of my access to things when that is not accurate. There have been times when I have worked with 5-star hotels, traveling to luxury places within, and I continue to speak specifically about African countries because it's important to remember that these things happen even within Africa. You don't have to be in a European country to experience profiling and things. It's sometimes actually worse within an African context because they're not used to seeing Black people and African women in certain spaces. So I remember vividly going on a project to this 5-star hotel and being ignored by the initial staff because they didn't realize that I was the reason why they were there. And they were speaking to my white partner as if he was in charge. And he very knowingly was like, I'm sorry, but you need to be talking to her. I don't know. Like, she's the one in charge. And of course they apologize and things, but again, it's just an example for me why I'm very cautious not to present my relationship, because again, optics matters from a racial standpoint with that. Even though I am proud of my relationship, it's just, there's a lot of complexity around that topic. So I'm not even sure if I'm answering your question completely, but I just but I just really feel moved to share that
Yeah.
there are elements of my experience as both a solo traveler as well as now someone who, when I do travel, I am with my partner, that
Yeah.
that makes me reflect on, okay, there's still a lot of change that needs to happen. And it is also very, I mean, what do you say? What do you say? In Benin, I was mistaken for a prostitute in a hotel that I was staying at. It's shocking. You know, it's shocking, and you don't know how to react in that situation. I just would encourage others not to be, not to not, don't be deterred from traveling. Those things can happen anywhere. It's a bit challenging when they're happening within a space where you are a majority and there's still all of these things. But I would just say that, yes, as a female solo traveler, I've had incredible experiences. I've met amazing people, and I've learned a lot about myself. But I've also been very uncomfortable, and I've also had experiences that really made me reflect on, wow, like it's not always as glamorous as it shows up on Instagram.
Right. Yeah, no, you answered the question, but also I was also going to get to asking you what the differences have been since being partnered with your fiance.
Yeah.
So thank you for also just going into that. For Nneka and Annette, and Sylvia as well, I'll still go back to the question around, you know, traveling solo as a Black woman. Any challenges that you faced, and what advice and tips you would give to any of the women who are watching and listening. So around being Black women, around being a woman even, and yeah, just what you would tell them in terms of traveling solo as a Black woman.
For me, I have multiple intersecting identities, not only as a woman, as a Black woman, as a fat woman. And so I have experienced discrimination based on all three of those. I, like Lee, have also been mistaken for a sex worker. And if that happens to anyone, my advice would be like, yes, girl, like there's nothing wrong with sex work. I don't put any shame on sex work. Sex work is work, and I just decline. No, thank you. But I don't shame women that take on sex work. You know what I mean? And I think initially when that happened to me, and it's happened more times than I could count, I was a little taken aback or embarrassed or put off by it. But the more I traveled, the more I learned that like there is no shame in sex work. And so I would definitely make that my first statement. Second of all, the stuff that I've experienced, like I said before, the negative experiences that I've had while traveling abroad, I've also experienced those things in the States. But one of the most kind of uncomfortable things that happened was when I was traveling through Asia. I was at actually a temple taking photos, and a white European woman stepped behind me, and I didn't know that she was standing behind me because I was standing there taking photos, and she decided to like hit me in the back and tell me to move because she wanted to take a photo of whatever I was taking a photo of. And in that moment, like it took me a minute to recognize, like, wait, did she just hit me? And then did she like swat me away like a fly? And I had to like, you know, get myself together. And I asked her like, what, don't put your hands on me. What are you doing? And I think me starting the conversation with her and like questioning her made her realize like I was not the right one to try to, you know what I mean, move or push or put hands on. But I also had to check myself because I know as a Black woman, like if I were to put hands back on her or to try to, you know what I mean, get back at her, then I would be the one that's going to be locked up abroad because the optics look like here's this older white European woman and this Black American woman like hitting her, regardless of the fact that like she hit me first, she disrespected me first. So I definitely had to like gather myself and gather that, you know, inner woman inside me, because I knew like if I got locked up abroad, my mom would be coming to whatever country trying to bail me out. Like it would have been a whole drama, but it definitely was a huge test. And I know that the only reason why she put her hands on me was because I was a Black person, and she thought that like she could touch me and just swat me away, and I wasn't having it. But I also had to check myself and not put myself in an even more dangerous situation by reacting to her disrespect.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
This is it's nuts. You asked an Oprah question, Patricia. You asked.
I know.
And like Antoinette said, there's from my experience, colorism plays a factor too. It does. Like I'm not a dark-skinned Black woman, and my experience is completely different. But I still experience the effects of colonization, of racism, and especially in what bothers me the most is when I go to my mom's country. So it's like I can go to my father's village, and still some of the kids in the village will be like, oh, Ndocha, like they'll be like, oh, a white woman. They'll see me and they'll be like, oh, that's a white woman. And I'm like, no, obviously I'm not a white woman, but they don't, because of my skin tone, it's like, but you are one though. And then I'll go to Cambodia and experience like an intense level of colorism and racism because of colonization. And when you're in the market, it's kind of an interesting thing, right? To differentiate when you do a ton of traveling, the difference between genuine curiosity and the effects of colonization and all the things that blend into that umbrella or kind of fall under that umbrella. So for me, the experience in I'd say something like my mother's land bothers me the most, because you have to really explain. I can't get a passport or anything there because I don't look Khmer. And you can't explaining that to them. When my mom is at the embassy and she's like, in Khmer, she's saying, this is my daughter. I'm married to an African man, and they're like, he doesn't look Cambodian,
Wow.
And that is an actual reason for not issuing a passport like that. You can't help but think about, the color of your skin, and you as a Black woman, and how you are treated and viewed and seen in all of these different spaces, even though my mother is full Cambodian. She's a Khmer woman. So it just, to me, I think any Black woman or woman across the diaspora watching and wanting to travel places, you are going to have crazy experiences, because people are curious, people are colonized. There are many countries that there are a few countries that you'll go to that haven't been touched and affected deeply by colonization and colorism and all of those things. There's skin whitening cream on the continent of Africa. It's in Asia. It's everywhere. So for anybody that looks like us and wants to travel around, I think it teaches you, one of the things that travel does teach you is to hold your head high, is to fully come to accepting who you are, and that you deserve to take up space everywhere you go as a Black. And travel has been a conduit to that for me, because I can be in the market in Cambodia and still speak a little bit Khmer and say my mother's from Cambodia. I can be in the village and tell the kids that I'm Igbo too, but I'm a Black woman in all these spaces. So I think that whoever you are, if you're watching and you want to travel and you're a Black woman, do it. And I have plenty more stories to share when you get home, as you can hear. So
yeah. I think one of the things that Annette spoke about is fear, and a lot of women just dealing with fear when it comes to travel and not knowing what the experience will be like wherever you want to go. So it's true. Just do your research. I think it's great that we have all of you with the platforms that already are sharing information that people can tap into. That would be my advice. Like, consume all the content that they've created, because even in your highlights on Instagram, you guys are sharing so many tips and advice. But Sylvia, just to answer that question, just because I know you haven't spoken on challenges that you faced as a Black, but also African Kenyan woman traveling solo.
So Neka mentioned it. Some people I think are racist out of just because how they've grown up and what they've seen on TV, and just the decision is just informed on that colonial mentality, and they're very arrogant, and they're racist just because they have this hatred towards Black people. So those I don't have time for, and I've experienced a few of those people in Paris especially, and I love Paris, but 2-3 people and they spoil your trip. But they're also people who are just curious. Like in Asia, I find that lots of people want to take pictures with me, and I always think it's sweet. Some people want to touch your hair. Some even want to smell your hair. And I just feel like these people are doing it out of genuine curiosity. And as much as it may sound like offensive or crossing the line, that's also the thing about travel is just you just have to have an open mind and have a conversation with these people. Let's say you can touch my hair, but you don't come too close. It's just let's have a conversation. Just have to be open-minded, because that's the beauty of traveling and beauty of meeting different people. Not everyone has the same upbringing as you, and this is a moment to make a conversation, make a new friend, learn from them, and they learn from you as well. And we just have to keep educating each other, and that's why we travel. That's why we have these experiences to educate people and to also learn from them, and learn that everything they're doing and everything they're doing, and also the perceptions we have are from what we've grown up and what has been hammered in us as we were growing up. So maybe it's time to just educate them and for a better future.
Yeah, there's a few more questions I wanted to ask, but I know we would like to invite some questions also from the audience members. But one question that I think before we go into that is such a key question is because you all have built these platforms that you're now able to monetize, and that monetization has evolved into creating products of your own that you are, creating content or creating an income around. For instance, I know Annette, you have now curated these fat girl trips, right? Where you curate these trips for fat women to travel together. There's information that is shared. You're able to give them sort of guidance and have them travel together. I know, Lee, you have created guides that you're selling on your website. So if people want to learn about a specific destination, they can purchase the guides from your website. Neka, I know you're working on a book, which I am so excited to read, because one, your writing is amazing. Your writing is fantastic, but to hear that there will be a book that, will be tangible that I can take home with me. I know it's called It's Not a Game, It's Practice. If there's a pre-order list, I'm ready for that. And Sylvia, I know you have created presets that you are selling so that people can also have beautiful feeds like you when they travel. And I know that there's an upcoming trip that you've curated with Wander XO in August to Turkey. But for somebody who is new to the content creation journey and would like to partner with brands, somebody who is looking to create a platform that they'll be able to monetize around travel content, what advice would you give them if they are at a starting point? What would you say to them? Well, these are the steps you need to take before you can work with brands and create something that is worth monetizing. Who would like to go first? You can put your hand up. All right, Lee. Thank you.
I will go first. Well, I think that this is it really depends, because there is a lot of coin to be made. And so there's so many ways. You can monetize through Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, video, podcast, retreats, presets. There's so many ways. But before you try to monetize, I think you have to make sure that you have a real product and you have something that you are offering people of value. And so specifically, if you are starting today, if your goal is to work with, say, a hotel, and you does your work look like what the hotel would want to commission you for? So you have to first start by doing the things you want people to pay you to do. You have to invest in yourself to do that. So if you want to work with, I don't know, a luxury like property, Eco Lodge, you need to take your own money and go and stay at Eco Lodges and create the content that you hope would attract that kind of client. That's the way that I did it. So if your goal is to work with a fashion brand, buy that fashion brand, style it, create the content around it, tag them, show them what you can do. If you want to pitch yourself ahead of any trip, if I'm going somewhere, I will reach out to a few different properties, introduce myself, show them examples of the kind of work I can offer to them and say, are you interested in partnering? You have to have some kind of portfolio or reference. And that doesn't always mean you have to have likes, you have to have a community, because your skill could literally just be creating content that they then use and license on their platform. So you can't reach out to someone to say, okay, I want to monetize, I want to work, when your content does not reflect what they would find value in, if that makes sense. So I would say step one is take care of home, clean up your garden, make sure it's attractive for the people to actually commission you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I agree with Lee. But first I would start off by saying that like everyone has their own platform. Like if you have an Instagram, if you're on social media, like you have a platform, your voice deserves to be heard. People care about what you think. And so if you're interested in, you know, making a profit off of that, I would agree with Lee and say, like, start with the things that you love. Like, start showcasing the things that you're out there spending your money on, because that's a way that I've been able to develop some brand partnerships, because when I had to pay for stuff, I was paying for it. Now the brands want to reach out to me and send me the stuff so that I can showcase it to my audience. And so they can feel that authenticity. They know when someone really actually is into their brand, and your audience will know that too. And so I agree with Lee in the fact that, like, if there's a certain hotel or a certain clothing brand or makeup that you like, start shouting them out just whenever, you know, don't wait until they're paying you for it, because then it seems like people can buy you. And so it's like in the beginning, you have to kind of shout out the things that you love, share with your audience the things that you're putting your own money into. And then as you build up your reputation, as you build up your brand and your audience, those companies will be looking towards you because you're a real lover, an authentic follower, or someone that actually uses their own coin to purchase their product. And now they want to highlight you and give you money just for sharing the things that you already love. And I think that in the influencing community, like, authenticity is so important. And that would be the first step for me.
Right. Neka.
I think a lot of people think it takes, I mean, Lee and Annette hit it on the head. Like, it does, you can't be posting infographics and then be like, why didn't the Four Seasons hit me up? You know, the two is not going to lie. So you really have to kind of mirror the content. That's what I was doing with photography. I had photographers that I loved, and I would go to the spots that they went to and try to shoot like them. So if you're in the space, you should be probably following along on whatever medium you're on. Some content creators that you like, or some creators in general that you like. Look at them and try to create it. I think that's the first, try it. You see they're getting paid by this person or this brand. Say, okay, like, maybe I could scrap up together something and try to shoot this at my local beach or something. You know, it takes that type of creativity working with what you have. You don't need the best equipment in the world. You just need the rep. You need the practice. Like, set a number. Hey, I'm going to make it to 100 posts of just, like, trying new ideas. Like, people get discouraged early. Oh, I haven't gotten any brand partnership within my first year. Like, I was shooting for years before anybody was like, oh, we want you to kind of wear this and tell a story about it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I've been telling stories and shooting photos for 3 years. So it's the opportunity presents itself because you've already prepared yourself for it.
Right.
I think the reps, just get your reps in. Keep going. Like, keep going. Hit 100. I think once you can say, like, I've done 100 of these things and nothing's shaken, I can just pivot. I think that until you have a certain amount under your belt of ideas, try to execute yourself, you can't complain about no brand reaching out or getting what you want out of this medium or monetizing.
Yeah. Sylvia.
Yeah, I agree with the ladies. I agree with what they said. Another thing I think that's important is, as much as you're pitching yourself, maybe you want to pitch an idea as well. Let's say if you're approaching a hotel and maybe you've been going there and you maybe like their cocktails and no one really talks about the cocktails. Maybe say, I want to create content around maybe your cocktails by the pool, just something. As much as you're pitching yourself, saying this is what I've done, and say, now go a step further and say, and this is kind of like the plan that I have for you. Let's try and do this over the next few weeks. So as much as you're pitching yourself, okay, pitch some ideas to them of what you plan on doing with them. I think that's also something nice to add when you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
If I may add, sorry. Another thing is that you have to offer something. I think it's really important not to just reach out and ask people for things. You have to be valuable.
Yeah.
So even if you don't necessarily have a large following, you can partner with someone. If you have like a community of like people who are on the same, like your peers at the same level as you, work together. Say, hey, we'll take a room, we'll bunk it together, and we'll create, and we'll give you this. This is what we can give you, in exchange for this. Because sometimes it's really just about portfolio building, so that then if two of you go and stay in a room together and create this beautiful content, the next hotel you go to, they're not going to know that. You can ask for 2 separate rooms. You can ask for all this stuff, but at least you have it under your belt that you have done this, you have given this for this brand. There's a reference there. So just know that never just reach out and ask for something. You should reach out and offer something in exchange for something.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people think that brand partnerships sort of just come to you and that people just throw themselves at you. But what you've touched on around creating a portfolio, a lot of people don't know that for a lot of, the beginning, you kind of have to pay for your own travels. I used to say this a lot, that when people ask me, how do you get to travel to all these places? I think, Sylvia, you may have also gotten this as a Kenyan or as an African woman. There's always somebody saying that, okay, your boyfriend, your partner, who's your sponsor, who's paying for all these travels. And when you try and explain to someone that, I don't have a car, my priority is not to buy a car, my priority is to travel. So I save for my trips and I create content around those trips. And that's what then shows people that I can create content around travel, among other things that I love to do. And I think the other thing around creating or pitching ideas around your interests, it doesn't always have to be partnering with a hotel or with an airline. It could also just be, menstrual health products. You have an idea around traveling and your menstrual health. Reach out to a company that does menstrual health products and say you have an idea around how I travel, how I maintain my hygiene while I'm traveling, the products I use. It could be around anything, whatever interests you have, you can marry them with the travel and reach out to the specific brands around that, whether it's fashion. A fashion brand can pay or can sort of pay you to showcase their clothes in a beautiful location. So I think it's also important to sort of just think outside the box around the kind of brands that will sponsor or partner with you and your content. Now we're going to go to the Q&A section, and we have some questions that have come through so far. I know we've spoken around solo travel, but I know that traveling with friends or traveling with other people can be a challenge. I personally don't like to travel in groups. Just because, for me, I'm very spontaneous with the things I want to do when I'm traveling, and maybe I can travel with one other person. But how do you decide who to travel with? And, for example, if you're going on location, how do you know when you're ready to go on vacation with a partner or with a group of friends? Who would like to tackle that?
I'll jump in and I'll just say that it can be really tricky to figure out who is going to be a good travel partner. One thing that I do try to do before I start to travel with someone is to let them know that, like, I am a very independent traveler, and there will be times where I'm going to want to break off and do things on my own, and just have that conversation with them so that they know that, like, we are going to split up at times, because I feel like when you do travel in a group or travel with a friend, sometimes there's this expectation that like you're going to want to do the exact same thing at the same time. And that's just not realistic. There's going to be some days where you want to sleep in and they want to wake up early. And so if I have that conversation with someone, or, you know, they want to go shopping, but I want to stay at the pool. If we have this conversation ahead of time and we agree that, hey, there's going to be lots of opportunity for us to do our own thing. We don't have to stay hip to hip the entire time. And if you're in a larger group, it can be like, hey, a couple of us want to stay at the pool and a couple of us want to go shopping. But making sure that there's an expectation and open communication so that we can actually minimize the like hurt feelings or miscommunications, because this is everyone's trip. This is everyone's vacation. I shouldn't have to sacrifice things that I want to do or opportunities that I had planned for myself to, like, you know, try to compromise with everyone. Like, we're all individuals and we can break up and split up and do the things that we want to do and come together for cocktails or reunite for dinner or something like that. But having that communication, also having the technology so that we can message each other, let each other know, hey, I'm here, gonna meet you there, making sure everyone has Wi-Fi, SIM card, whatever, so that we can still be in communication and keep things safe, but also have the flexibility to be able to like break out and do the things that we want. I feel like that oftentimes will help minimize any disagreements and make sure to maximize everyone's experience as a group and individually.
That's good advice.
That is very good advice. I wish I would have known that in a lot of times in the past. I think it's very important to just be upfront and honest that the friends that you have at home are not going to be always the people you can travel with. And you have to accept that. You have to simply accept that. I make it a rule of thumb where if I have a friend who, every time we go to eat, if you can only eat chicken fingers or if you can only eat certain things, that's not necessarily the kind of person who I want to travel with, because I like to try new things. I like to do new things. I don't mind being uncomfortable by the unknown and really immersing myself in a place. So you have to really get clear about the way you like to travel and be clear with that person. And also if someone is rigid but still open-minded, that is fine. But just being cautious to know that, okay, well, if I want to be able to, so my partner is very, very, very adventurous. He wants to go camping. He wants to do all of the things. And while I don't mind doing that, I love that. There's times where I just want to sit and take a bubble bath. Sometimes I'm just tired. And I think that you have to be with somebody who is willing, like Annette said, you have to be able to independently do what you want to do and give me the space to do what I want to do without feeling like you're in, like, I am not needing, like, I just don't want that pressure from someone. And I also don't want to deal with someone who is complaining all of the time or is finding something wrong with something. Or if we are within a country where, okay, internet is not strong or electricity is like, I don't want that energy of someone who's just complaining about things. So if you can be open-minded, then that's the kind of person you want to be with.
I completely agree. And I need Annette to plan my next group trip because it is, I don't know if I could travel with groups like that, to be honest. So I'm Patricia, I align with you very much so in terms of like, it's very small. It's usually my husband and I, or I have a sister, so we'll tag along. And select group of friends, because I don't necessarily like doing touristy things when I go places. So like the monuments and things like that, it's not like I don't scratch my itch. I just want to go eat, explore, meet people. We'll probably get into something to get into, but like that to me is the essence of travel, is the people. So I really want to meet people and end up somewhere where we wouldn't have found on Google Maps or something. And with partners, I don't know if travel should be like the testing ground for the relationship. I can't say I haven't used it, as such. It makes for great stories. It makes for great stories. If you're trying to figure out if you should be with that person or not, or whether you guys can really be in a new place together and experience these new things, I think you really figure out the pacing of what this is going to be when you're removed from like the familiarity of the surroundings and the everyday routines that you guys go through. So I've had a couple of break travel experiences with relationships that I don't regret. I don't regret it, but you who's who really. And like Lee said, I like to try new things, and the person that I'm specifically talking about is like, he would not eat anything, drink anything, and it kind of became like a, why are we even doing this, really? So yeah.
Sylvia.
Yeah, so I would say, I think if you're planning on traveling with someone who's like in your pool of friends, and somebody probably you have the same common interests and people who your personalities gel. Although I have found that traveling brings out something in us that you're like, oh, this is my friend. We don't even argue about anything when you're back home. And then when you travel with someone and then there's someone, it kind of brings out a different personalities in people. I think because of the time pressure, you know, you only have a day, a few days to do something. And, you know, one person wants to do this, as Annette said, and you're trying to, you don't want, you've flown all the way, maybe a couple, you spent days planning this trip, you've spent 24 hours maybe traveling to the other side of the world, and now you don't want to agree on something. So it just brings out this kind of like tension. But I think having the same interest and having personalities that gel together at first is a good starting point. Although I'll just tell everyone out there that just traveling just brings out a side of you that sometimes you may not have seen. And I think, as Neka said, if you can get past that, traveling with someone, maybe a partner or a friendship, then I think those people are there to stay. If you can get through traveling with someone and get through all the hurdles, then they're there to stay. They're there for the long term. Yeah.
And I think also around content creation, sometimes you might travel with someone and then, you know, they're not really into taking pictures as much as you are. So you're going there with the expectation that, oh, no, I have somebody to take my pictures for me. And they're over it after the second picture, like, no, that's, and you're like, no, I need this, that. So you're very cognizant. So I think what you said around just being very clear before you go, what kind of traveler are you? Are you a morning person? Do you want to go see the museums and the monuments? I won't drag you to the supermarkets with me. You know, like, I think communication is key. And Annette, I think you had something to add on to that.
Yeah, I just had one thing to add. Like, one way that I was able to kind of perfect this is actually by doing group travel. So just as a solo person going on like a group trip where there is like a group leader or a tour guide, and actually being able to like communicate with the tour leader and say, like, actually, I don't want to do that activity that's on the schedule today. I'll meet you guys at the place for lunch. And so I think oftentimes people will not want to do group travel because they feel like they're locked into a certain itinerary. But again, this is your trip, you know? So if you want to sleep in instead of going to the museum with the 30 people that you're on the trip with, like that's your right, and that's your money, and you can actually curate the trip around whatever you want. You just have to communicate that with the people, you know? So that's another thing. Like, if you are a solo traveler but are afraid to like do something on your own, you can go on a group trip and then like pick and choose the activities that you want to do.
Great. Thank you. We have another question around advice for somebody who's not so used to traveling, or someone who is working within a specific budget. I'll offer the first piece of advice. I think it's important to find content creators, travel content creators especially, who share their experiences around the places that they travel, and who are very transparent with how much travel to certain countries or locations or destinations cost. And I know, like, each of you is somebody worth following on social media, and I know you can also then find in who you follow. That's a thing I do. I'll go to, you know, who is Annette following or who is Lee following, and also find content creators there. I can recommend Catch Me If You Can. Jessica Nabongo has traveled to every single country in the world and is the first Black woman to have done so. And then I'll let you guys tackle that question. Advice for someone who's not so used to traveling, or someone who's working within a specific budget? What would you say to them?
There are actually companies that have made travel more affordable through like payment plans. And that was actually one of the first ways that I was able to travel internationally. It was through, it's called STA, the Student Travel Agency. And I wasn't a student. I think I was like gonna be 30 that year. But through that company, I was able to book my trip, book my flight, and do everything on a payment plan. So like I was still able to pay my rent, pay all my bills, but then each month, you know, 1 month I could put 100 towards the trip, the next month maybe 200 towards the trip, maybe the next month nothing. But I had up until 7 days before my flight to pay up my trip in full. And so that was actually one of the ways that I was able to budget to be able to afford travel. I also was able to, like later on, take on a seasonal job, so that I was working at a summer camp for children, and then I didn't get paid for that job until the end of the summer. And then I would use that money specifically as like a nest egg for my travel for the next like 6 to 8 months. And so there's lots of different ways to prioritize. Maybe if you have a side hustle, like the money that you make in your side hustle goes to your travel fund, or finding one of these companies that does like payment plans. There's even Black owned companies now that do these payment plan travel opportunities. And so it'll definitely take a little more time and research, but there is options out there for people that need to budget and take a little more time to pay before they go on a trip.
Yeah, I agree. And to piggyback on what Annette said, I would say if you are on a budget, if you want to create a budget, another great finance tip I can give you in general is just to simply create a separate savings account that's just for travel. So, and then schedule it to automatically come out of your account within whatever time frame that you dictate. So if you want to travel somewhere, I don't know, 6 months from now, a year from now, create a separate account for it, schedule and say, okay, for every month, I want $100 to come out of my savings account, and just go directly there. That way you're not having to dip into like your day-to-day expenses. You're building up and being intentional about it. So yeah, I would just create a budget and be intentional.
I completely agree with Annette and Lee. I think those are two of the best tips that you could have, I think, when you're on a budget, honestly. And reverse engineer how much you want to go here. You know, this flight is going to be this much, the hotel is going to be this much. Let me reverse engineer my savings, my separate savings account, to hit this goal by this time. So I know that, you know, I have my petty cash, I have flight and hotel, and I'm ready to go.
Fantastic. Sylvia?
Oh, go ahead.
Annette? No? Okay, yeah, I agree. You have to be intentional in your saving and putting money aside to travel and do your research. As I said, there's so right now, these days, there's so much competition in terms of like airlines and properties, places to stay. So do your research and you'll actually find that it's cheaper than you actually expected it to be. So yeah, make the internet your friend when you're doing, when you're planning your next trip.
Right. I'm going to ask you guys to do a quick fire round.
Okay. Can I just add super quickly though, just for people that are budget traveling, there are also like language exchange opportunities where you could actually go to a country, teach a language, and then sometimes your airfare and accommodation will be covered. And I also mentioned Workaway, which is an opportunity for you to work in exchange for accommodation. So there are other opportunities where you can work in exchange for travel, accommodation, sometimes like food, all of those things. So if you are budget conscious, there are opportunities out there.
Sorry, I'd like to add one thing as well. Au pairing is something that is slept on, but is really good. So if you can't necessarily afford to travel somewhere as a tourist, you can travel somewhere and be an au pair. That way you're all of your expenses are covered and you're paid, and then you have time to be able to explore when you're not working. So it's just finding creative ways to generate income as part of your travel. It doesn't always have to look like a traditional tourist experience.
Right. And for those who are not familiar with au pairing, it's working as a child caregiver, right, in a foreign country. Thank you so much. So we're going to do a quick fire round, and this one is just a bit more light-hearted as we get to the end of the Q&A session and of this wonderful webinar, because I've also picked up quite a few things. So we're just going to ask your preferences around travel, and then we'll just answer them in this order: Nneka, Lee, Annette, and then Sylvia. Okay, so the first one, do you prefer plane or do you prefer train?
Plane all day. All day.
Plane.
Plane.
Sylvia?
Plane. 100%
Okay.
plane.
Do you prefer a solo trip or do you prefer a girls trip?
Girls trip. I'm leaning towards girls trip now. They've been fun.
Girls trip.
Solo trip.
Sylvia?
Girls trip, but not more than 3 girls. 3 girls, girls trip. Not a huge group,
Thank
small
you.
group.
So,
Girls.
yeah.
I'm all about a solo trip. Do you prefer a party, vacay, or a romantic, like a romantic partner trip?
Romance, for sure.
Give me all the romance. I do not want that party life.
I'm single, so I'm like, let's turn up. Where the party at?
Yeah, I want the party as well. I'm looking for a good party.
Okay.
I'm all about the romance. Airbnb versus hotel. Which one do you prefer, Airbnb or hotel?
Ooh, this is tough. It depends. It really find gems on Airbnb. I would say I'm just gonna say hotel. But it's tough.
I feel you, Nneka. For me, it depends on the country. So if I'm in a certain, like, if I'm on a safari, I want to be in a hotel. Like I want all the vibes of a hotel. But if I'm in, say, like South Africa, I want an Airbnb, because you have so much inspiration for like interior design, and you discover neighborhoods and people and things to do. Yeah.
I prefer slow travel, so I prefer an Airbnb because, like you said, Lee, you can get to know the neighborhood, you can get to know your neighbors. I also love to cook, and so having an Airbnb and a kitchen is important to me for sure.
2 as well. I think I like Airbnbs for long term because eventually I'm gonna get tired and I want to cook. And then maybe for short term, I prefer hotels. I also prefer hotels. I prefer Airbnbs when I'm with my daughter. So yeah, I think Airbnb long term and hotels short term.
Hotels all the way. But then I'll do the hotel and then wander around like I live there. Do we prefer street food or fancy restaurant food?
Street food. I hate fine dining. I really do.
I like street food, but I'm a little fancy girl. I like to have a nice 5-course wine paired meal. You know, give me all the luxury. Annette said, Black girls need joy. She needs joy in her life.
I definitely agree. Black girls need joy, but I love discovering like the flavors of a country. And I feel like one of the best ways to do that is through the street food and like the locally made food. So I'm a street food girl all the way.
Give me all the courses, girl. Give me 10 courses. 15 courses. I did enough street food in Bangkok. I'm done. No. Fine dining.
Can I like them all? That I went to Peru in 2019, and we went to one of like this like highly rated like restaurants, and there was like, I want to say up to 30 courses, and that was like, it was fun until it was punishment. Like that's too much. You know. So it was beautiful, it was delicious, but I was like, we were there for like 3 hours. Like it's enough. This is a work shift.
All right. All right. Do you prefer beach trip or something more in the country, like a cabin or a mountain retreat? Beach or country?
It depends on my mood, but I've been beach. I've been feeling like beach lately.
I lean towards beach, but because I live in a coastal place, I'll go to the nature and cabin.
Okay.
Yeah.
I live in Playa. I moved to the beach on purpose. Like I want all the bikinis, buns out, suns out, all of that.
Yeah.
Well, I live on the beach also, so yeah, I'd like the cabin. I like to get away from the beach sometimes. Yeah.
I am all about the beach. Beach, sun, sand, all of it. All right, so we are at the end, and we have one more question for each of you. And this is going to be also quick answers. I just want to know, what are the top 3 things that you cannot travel without? And we're going to flip the order. So Sylvia, Annette, Lee, and then Neka. What are the top 3 things that you cannot travel without?
So I go first. Well, if I'm traveling solo, I guess my tripod, because I'll need to take pictures at some point. I mean, my travel documentation is obvious, like my passport and stuff. Then I'll have my credit card, but I always feel safer to have some money as well. Like maybe just have $100 or $200 in cash in the local currency, just because your credit card can frustrate you sometimes. So I always have cash, my travel documents, and a tripod, because I want to be able to take those pictures, and might not always have someone next to take your pictures. Yeah.
Perfect.
I would definitely say my tripod as well, because as a solo traveler, I need to be able to document that, create content. I would also say a luggage scale, because I have so much anxiety as far as like my luggage, and I often will shop in places where they have plus size clothing. And so sometimes I'll need to buy like a separate luggage. So I need to have that luggage scale. And then of course, some cash.
For me, all camera equipment I'll leave out of it, because for me it's obvious. I would say a journal, because I'm trying to be intentional about documenting how I feel for my future self. I would say an unlocked phone. My phone is unlocked, and it's very important when you're traveling to be able to easily get like a SIM card locally to be able to communicate. And I'm going to be cheesy and say if I'm not traveling solo, I'll say my fiance, because I'm newly engaged and I don't want to travel without him.
Wait, Lee, give it a couple months, you know. But yes, besides Courtney, my husband, the journal, I definitely would say a journal. Apart from the camera equipment, I have a film camera now that I can around, and it helps slow things down for me, because you can't just stop to see the photo that I took. So I'd say that a little film camera, my journal, and also whatever book I'm reading at the time.
Yeah.
Great. For me, phone, travel documents, money. That's it. I don't even need clothes. I'll shop where I go. Like I'm good to just travel. I even travel light most times, because I don't want the anxiety of checked-in luggage getting lost. So I travel very light. But ladies, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful that you guys took the time and that you were able to share with us. Thank you so much for creating the platforms that you have created, for sharing in the ways that you do. I think so many people, not only today, but if they follow you in the past and will continue to follow you in the future, will get so much from your content, from what you share with us, the tips, the tricks, the advice, the communities that you create. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know I have benefited so much from it. So I'm so great to speak to you. Thank you so much to Amaka Studio for having us. This is such a wonderful, wonderful seminar, webinar, festival that they are hosting. I'm grateful that you're putting this together, guys. And make sure to travel to check them out and follow them on all their platforms, amaka.studio. The hashtag that we're using for the festival is Our World Festival. There's still a second giveaway that's happening. They're giving away an iPad and products from Black-owned brands. And of course, we are super grateful to Vista Bank for sponsoring the Our World Festival. Thank you so much. To everybody who joined us today, thank you, thank you, thank you for your questions, thank you for your time, thank you for your love, and thank you for being here with us. We are super grateful. And remember that the festival is going on till Tuesday. And there's so many other wonderful, wonderful sessions that will be happening. There's going to be uplifting content, wonderful speakers from all over. And I'm so excited to also be able to tap into those conversations that will be happening. So make sure to follow, to attend. This talks about financial independence, entrepreneurship, mental and sexual health. Guys, it's the whole gamut. So this is where you want to be. And this is open to everybody, anywhere you are in the world. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the festival and have a lovely, lovely day, evening, wherever you are. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you. Wonderful way to spend a Sunday.
There's this element that you might need to perform your culture and your identity just in order to stand out.
My whole career, I've been told to speak Kiswahili, and that's what's going to make me Kenyan. Learning to speak Kiswahili in Kenya, in Nairobi, is pretty difficult. So I haven't really gotten to that point, but I still would. I had a disdain for it before because I was like, that's not what makes you Kenyan. But now I'm like, it's actually a beautiful language. If I could ever put Kiswahili into my music, I'd want to do it authentically, but I'm not 100% sure that that's what would make me African. So I'm still figuring that out.